Anxiety was something that I'd tried and thought about getting rid of many times before. I often hear about people who beat their anxiety or got rid of it for good, but no matter what or how much I tried, I could never seem to shake it off myself. No sooner had I relaxed for a while was I entering another panicked or anxious state. I tried absolutely everything to beat anxiety. The constant battle was exhausting and one that it seemed that I couldn't win. Anxiety restricted my life, stopped me doing lots of things, made it really hard. So I used to tell people that I suffered with anxiety, a bit like it was some kind of illness to get rid of. But deep down, I could never imagine life without it, and I don't think I really wanted it either. It was what I was used to all my life. Eventually, after 20 years of anxiety, I began to learn the truth. Anxiety can never be beaten or gotten rid of, and from my own experience, I know that it has almost infinite resources and willpower. Even when I feel completely exhausted, surge after surge of adrenaline can pump through my own body, and the red alert system can sound. I know from my own experience that anxiety will always come back if it feels it needs to. It seems that it's something that we're all born with, programmed with, and live with for all of our lives. It exists to protect us. It means well. It's not really the enemy. And what I eventually learned is that we don't even have to listen to it. It might have a lot to say about what I do in my life, but that doesn't mean that it's right. This became even clearer when I learned that anxiety is operating partially blind. So if you've heard of the amygdala, which is responsible for the fight or flight response, it's walnut shaped, call it the walnut. It can't see what it's doing. It just takes messages from the brain and the body, and then it takes action. So if you imagine a ship, and the mind is the bridge, it can see out to sea, and it can spot any potential threats. The amygdala is down in the engine room. It's blind to the outside world. It just takes messages from the bridge and then takes action. Now imagine that the bridge calls down to the engine room and says, "We think we might have spotted an iceberg." The engine room whacks on the red alert system. Everything is go to handle the oncoming threat. But what the engine room doesn't realise is that for the briefest moment it looked like an iceberg. There was never an iceberg. There was no threat. But it's too late. The red alert system has already been sounded, and the ship is on hyper alert. That's an example of the relationship between the mind and the amygdala. The amygdala can initiate the fight or flight response really quickly, in as little as 100 to 150 milliseconds, and it can do this without any conscious decision making or awareness to it. I've experienced it thousands of times myself, so I can say that with confidence. Yes, I know it's a nuisance when you're doing your food shopping, you're in a crowd of people or on a date, but the poor little walnut, it only wants to help, and you're stuck with anxiety for your life. Anxiety is not the enemy. It's not an illness to try and get rid of. You're with it for all of your life, so you may as well treat it as a friend. When you begin to treat anxiety as a friend rather than a foe, you can begin to fear it less, and you can begin to waste less energy and resources trying to beat it. It might have an opinion, but that doesn't mean that it's right, or that we have to listen to it. When you stop fearing anxiety, your walnut-shaped amygdala doesn't get the message. There's a possible threat noticed up here on the engine on the bridge. Sound the alarm. It can be exhausting and never-ending trying to beat or cure anxiety, which I tried for many years, and either way I now think that it's impossible. You'll never beat anxiety, Remember, it's a fail-safe. It's programmed into humans many thousands of years ago to try and keep us safe. You might stop it in its tracks, but it will be back if it feels it needs to. The trick is not to fear it or try to fight it off. Take things it says with a pinch of salt. When you get an anxious thought, you can simply say to yourself, that's an anxious thought. Then you can distance yourself from it. It's anxiety's opinion. It doesn't make it right. You don't have to listen to it. This can give the thought less power. You can let it disappear like all of the other thoughts that come and go throughout the day. It might persist, but you can simply keep saying to yourself, that's another anxious thought. It's another anxious thought. When I first tried this, sometimes it was easy. Sometimes I had to keep saying again and again, that's an anxious thought. There's another one I'm having. There's another anxious thought. The thought would persist, but I have to be persistent too. It's only trying to help the poor little walnut. We don't need to block it away. Just allow the thoughts to come and go. And remember, anxiety has almost infinite resources and willpower. If you try to block it out, it will just come back again. It thinks what it has to say is important and that you have to listen to it. So let it say what it wants, listen to it, but tell it as it is. They're anxious thoughts, and you don't have to believe or act upon them. And when you label thoughts as anxious thoughts, if they come up again in the future, you might even remember this and might cause less fear or problem to you at the time. Before you even get any problems, you've already remembered it's anxiety's opinion. And this can work with feelings too. Adrenaline or palpitations and tight chest feelings. These are also anxious thoughts, if you think about it. Any interpretation of how we're feeling is a thought too. We don't need to try and get rid of these thoughts or fight them. Just make anxiety your friend and an ally, and it may well begin to quieten down. Once it knows it's being listened to, it can relax. It's made its statement, and you can be free to get on with your day.